Hey guys, welcome back to yet another episode of A Second Chance Stories of Young Offenders. We're your hosts, Callista Lynn.
Akshay Keshri.
And Sophia Luisi, and we're beyond excited to introduce a very special guest who's joining us.
Jose Burgos, a dedicated advocate and former juvenile lifer, has spent 27 years committed to criminal justice reform.
As the Michigan campaign coordinator at the Campaign for Fair Sentencing of Youth, he champions equitable sentencing and second chances for young offenders. Please welcome Jose.
Hi, Jose. We just wanted to say that we are honored that you are joining us today. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you. And I'm honored to be here.
I'm so glad to hear that. To start off, could you share how your personal upbringing and experiences have influenced your commitment to criminal justice reform, especially concerning youth sentencing? So specifically, what did your journey to jail look like? Can you give us a background of your story and your life?
Yeah, I can give you a quick summary. I was born in Puerto Rico. Not too long after, several years after I was born, we migrated to the United States, the mainland. Me and my family, my grandparents, my mother, my siblings, we went to Florida. From Florida, we went to New York, and then ultimately, we ended up here in Detroit. In Detroit is where I ultimately caught my case. I was 16 years old at the time of my arrest. At the time of my arrest, I had already dropped out of junior high school, so I actually never made it to high school. I dropped off in middle school, and I think one of the things, my trajectory into a life of crime and ultimately prison came. It really started like at the age of 13. At the age of 13, I suffered my mother's. She had committed suicide, and at the time, I didn't realize how much her death had affected me at the time. So, I just started like just looking for things. What I felt like I had lost at home, which was like a sense of family. I actually went to the streets and got involved in gangs. One of the things that gangs are real good at is providing a false sense of family. You know what I'm saying? So once I got involved in that, that was my introduction to acts of violence or being around violence and seeing it. And so at the age of 16, I was arrested with several others. It wasn't a gang-related case, but being in the gangs is what introduced me to the type of lifestyle that ultimately landed me there at that day. I went along with several others. We were in the process of, it was a drug deal that went bad. I mean, you have both the buyer and the sellers were there for the same reasons. We were trying to rob each other. So nobody had money, nobody had drugs. And unfortunately, somebody ended up losing their life. Somebody also, a twin brother, actually, the victims were two twin brothers. One of them lost his life and the other one was paralyzed from the neck down. And so as a result, I was charged as an adult, and ultimately I was given a life without parole sentence along with two 15 to 30-year sentences, which is how it is that I ended up in prison.
I'm so sorry to hear about the difficulties you had to go through in your childhood, Jose, but your journey from being a juvenile lifer to working with criminal justice reform is remarkable. So can you share some key moments or experiences during your 27 years of incarceration that shaped your perspective on reforming the criminal justice system?
When I first went in as a child, I never knew that children could be sentenced to life without parole. So I'll start there. And then so when I went in, but even after I had got sentenced, I don't think that I really understood the ramifications of my actions. I really didn't understand, what that actually really meant, life without parole. And it wasn't until I got like a little bit older, I realized that life without parole meant that I was going to die in prison. And so there came a time, I think it might have been 12, 13 years into my sentence, when I found myself in a segregation cell. So segregation is the way they push you, if you get in trouble in the system. And I found myself, honestly, I share this story a lot, where I found myself having a conversation with God, right? I was looking around in that cell, and it was like I couldn't get no lower in life than where I was at that moment, and I had a conversation with God, man, and I basically just said, like, this can't be it, right? Like, my life can't end like this. What I'm saying? I know that I have more to offer, whether that be in prison or outside, even then I didn't really understand or know that how I was going to get out of prison. But I think when I finally came to that realization, I knew that I had to do something different, right? Because I was living the same type of lifestyle in prison, when I first started. that landed me, in prison in the first place. So I wanted to make sure that I changed that pattern. So from that moment on, I ended up getting out of segregation. I actually bought me like an old school typewriter, taught myself how to type, and literally, really, really got involved with the juvenile lifer movement. Actually, when I was in segregation, not too long after I had that conversation with God, is when I got my first letter from an attorney by the name of Deborah LaBelle here in the state of Michigan, who was doing a study on juvenile lifers. And she was like, hey, we think that this is an unconstitutional sentence. Would you be willing to participate in this study? And so I got involved. And from that point on, it was just like, my entire life changed, within the system. Really, really just started focusing on working on my case, studying my case, going to a law library, getting into as many programs as possible. And I just wanted to do better, and I think that was the moment that I said, enough is enough, something better has to come out of this.
Thank you so much for sharing your experience. I think your story is beyond inspiring and serves as such a good example to those who might be struggling right now, with incarceration. I think every offender or former offender has their own story, and juvenile lifers often face unique challenges when reintegrating into society. Could you tell us about your own experiences after release and how they've influenced your work in advocating for reform and supporting others in similar situations?
Well, I think one of the things that helped me the most when I first came home was the fact that I still had a family and I still had some friends that had really, stood by me throughout, those years. There were friends who I met while I was incarcerated that were also part of my life once I came home. And so when I came home, when I went to get resentenced as a juvenile lifer, when I went back and gave my life, sentence back in court, I actually told the judge that, one of the things that I wanted to do, I wanted to make something good come out of something bad, because I knew that that I wasn't just like the worst moment of my life. I knew that, there was more to me. So I wanted to, I wanted to come, make, like I said, make something good come out of something bad. Here it is, you had a young man who lost his life. You had a young man who was still actually at the time of my resentencing living with the injuries that I had caused. And I didn't want to just come out here, I wouldn't have had mind working at a factory or something like that, but I wanted something more for my life, right? So when I came home, I sat back one day and I was thinking like, man, because when I came home, I had difficulties getting my state ID because I didn't have a birth certificate. So for an entire year, I didn't have a state ID, which made getting a good, meaningful job, hard. But I still, even without an ID, because I had a family, because I had friends, and I was able to find a job under the table, getting paid without having to have an ID. I sat back and I thought one day, I wonder how hard this would be, or I can imagine how difficult this could be if you didn't have a support system. And so, I was already maintaining communication with those that were coming home on parole, and I just had this urge, man, to really. I knew that in order to change a system, the only way we can change a system is those who have been impacted by that system had to be willing to speak out, right? And so that's not for everybody. There's a lot of people who come home and don't want to get involved, and that's okay. That's they have the right to do that because it is very traumatic. But I knew that the way for me to do this was just to really, really be transparent about my experience and about the fact that children should never be taken away from children. You know what I'm saying? And so I'm a firm believer that children, at least, it's not to say that they shouldn't be held accountable for their actions, but once they do get incarcerated, they should at least have an opportunity to say, hey, I'm no longer that person. I'm a different person now. And for these reasons, I deserve a second chance. So that's what really got me involved in the work.
Speaking of second chance, I'm glad you said that because that's our podcast name. But many people might not fully understand the challenges faced by juvenile lifers upon release. Can you go more in depth about the switch that went off in your head, the bulb that went off when you were like, I'm going to completely drop this side of my life and I'm going to change myself and change who I'm going to be from the future? And could you shed light from that point on some of these challenges, such as securing employment, housing, mental health support, and education? And what solutions do you believe can address these issues effectively? So that's like a three-pronged question.
Well, I think what's unique about my experience is the fact that, a year after I came home, I became a reentry specialist at the State Appellate Defender's Office here in the state of Michigan. So I was actually doing reentry work. So I have a perspective, a personal perspective because I went through it. And then I also have a professional perspective because I was able to give assistance to a lot of the guys that came home, in particular, juvenile lifers. And really, there's a population of juvenile lifers that unfortunately, have been gone so long that some of them come home and they don't have no family. You know what I'm saying? I mean, they don't have no family, they don't have no friends. There are some that, they have been incarcerated so long, they bought into the fact that, hey man, I may never get out. You know what I'm saying? So they really didn't have a plan, you know what I'm saying? Because in some cases it happened so fast that, from the time they got resentenced within days or months, they're released after, 20, 30, 40 years. And so, that presented some challenges, you know what I'm saying? So I was able to go get guys from the prison, pick them up. One of the things that they needed to learn how to do was like use phones because, like myself, many of us went in, the internet didn't exist. Cell phones were cell phones. I mean, when I talk about a cell phone back in the day, we're talking about it was like a big old carrying box, right? And so, so that was probably one of the first biggest challenges is learning how to use technology. You know what I'm saying? Because we know that a lot of places that you go to apply for jobs want you to apply online. And so just learning how to do that, learning myself how to do it, and then learning in a way that I was able to teach others those skills as well. How to submit a resume. I mean, there's challenges with employment because now, you don't have no real, life experience with work out here. And then you got some places that actually give you a job and then, come back, with a few weeks later. So, oh, by the way, we ran a background check on you, and it turns out that you're a convicted felon, especially for a homicide. And so therefore we got to let you go, right? So that happens a lot. Housing, you know what I'm saying? There's many people that come home that don't have housing. So they're temporarily housed by the Michigan Department of Corrections. And then when they're able to, secure employment, secure money for housing, when they go submit these applications, often, after being charged $70, $80, $90, $100 to submit these applications for these apartments, they're denied because of their background, because they have a criminal conviction. For working, you know what I'm saying? You got some people, let's say, for example, you have guys who come home and they go to like a CDL class, right? Learn how to drive trucks. So you get a CDL license and you think you're ready to work, but now all of a sudden they're telling you that, we can't hire you because you don't have no experience. Well, what do you mean? You know what I'm saying? Like everybody who started in this field didn't have experience when they first started. You know what I'm saying? So there's a lot of obstacles, man, that get in the way. But I think what's been very, very helpful, and I think this is a model that I think should be followed across the country, is the fact that a lot of times when we get out of prison on parole, we are told that we should not associate with other known felons. I'm a big believer that, and I've been an example of it myself, is that, we can help each other more than anybody else can. You know what I'm saying? So I think, like here, we here in Michigan, we have a very close knit community of former juvenile lifers, and we often share resources with each other. Like there's some jobs coming up, you know what I'm saying? I share them with them. If there's an event coming up or some advocacy work, I share that with them. If they need a ride to go see the parole board, just go see the parole agent or something like that. You know what I'm saying? We always just look out for each other, man. And I think that is what's keeping a lot of people, man. There's been a big shift in that, man. And guys are staying home because those of us who have experienced that situation, we know what it's like. We don't want you to go back. We want to keep our community safe, and therefore, we're going to make sure that you get everything you need to succeed out here.
Thank you for that. And you've served a lengthy sentence as a juvenile lifer. How did you maintain hope and motivation during those years? And how has the resilience shaped your approach to advocacy and reform?
It was at first, I'm not gonna lie, man, it was very, very scary. You know what I'm saying? It was very scary to go in there at such a young age and being told that you're not gonna, you're never gonna come home. And you sit back. I used to watch some of the old heads that had been there for decades and had basically given up, right? So, I used to look at others that were just in a dark place mentally, and I was afraid of that. You know what I'm saying? I got scared of getting into, allowing prison to become me. I didn't want to do that. That was, prison is a very ugly place, especially for children. And so that motivated me. To, even though I had life without parole, there was always that little glimpse of hope. You know what I'm saying? Even before the conversations came up about juvenile lifers, I always had a little glimpse of hope. I didn't know how it was going to happen, but I knew deep down inside there was something just morally wrong about sending children to spend the rest of their lives in prison, right? I didn't know who was going to fix that. I didn't know when the conversation was going to start, but I held on to that. And so that kept me, aligned in prison. That kept me from falling too far into the politics of prison, because, the politics of prison can really, really swallow a human being up, and then, once I knew that, I was going to have that opportunity to come home, I thought about the people who raised me in prison, the mentors, of those who gave me guidance. And, I've met some just extremely wonderful, just good people in prison, man, that just made some very, very horrible mistakes, And before I got out, I used to remember what it used to make me feel like when I used to hear about somebody who was formerly incarcerated that was out here advocating, and I knew how good that made me feel. I know, I understood how good it made, what it did for my hope, right? And so I always told myself that if I ever give an opportunity to do so, when I go home, I want to be able to give that hope back to somebody that's still in there, fighting to get out. So that's been my drive.
So I know the process of adapting to life outside of prison can be extremely daunting. So I know you're saying that your mindset was specifically, oh, I'm going to go home and I'm going to become better. And overall, I'm going to change other people's lives. But can you share specific strategies from inside prison that helped you overcome the challenges that you faced in prison, such as, I don't know, difficulties with other prisoners, but in that time period itself, not just looking to the future, but in the present? Does that make sense? I don't know if that made much sense.
I'll try to answer it. Um, I just, like, for me, man, I just set goals, you know what I'm saying? Like, I really set goals when I was in there. I actually still have a conversation book that I have, where I created my goals of what I wanted to do when I came out here. I didn't know how that was going to look. I was like, I don't know. I had the slightest idea that my life would go in the direction that it went now. But I had set myself up mentally. I had set myself up, man, for that. I remember when I was on the inside, I was in a mentoring program, and one of the things that we used to do is we used to tell our stories to children, actually, like juveniles who were already on probation would come to the facility. In the visiting room, we had a team of guys, and we would go out there and share our stories with the youth about our experiences and why they shouldn't, go down, the same path that we went down. And I think, during that time, I did it for like the last 7 years of my sentence. I often was the first one to raise my hand when it was time to say, okay, who's going to tell their stories this month? You know what I'm saying? And I think it was me unknowingly preparing myself for what was to come. You know what I'm saying? Because I wanted it to I wanted to have that practice. So when I got out here, it would be easier for me to get in front of a crowd and be able to share my story with others. So that's what got the ball rolling. And I hope I answered your question. I think I went off a little bit.
No. You certainly answered my question. But I was wondering if you remember any from your head, and if you're comfortable sharing, can you share some of the goals that you wrote down in your little book?
Yeah. I wanted, I had financial goals, you know what I'm saying? And those financial goals, some of them have put up, but this is how my mindset was, right? Like, even before I went back and gave the life without parole sentence, right? As a lifer in there, they used to, we used to see the parole board like after 10 years, and then after every 5 years, and they would just give you like a 5-year continuance, because, being charged doing time for first-degree murder, you couldn't get a parole unless it was a commutation. And I remember getting a denial one time. And then on the denial, I crossed out everywhere where it said denial, and I put parole all the way across the board. I put it in a plastic sleeve, put it on my bulletin board, and this is what I looked at every day when I went to sleep, and this is what I looked at every day when I woke up in the morning. So I envisioned my parole, and so that was the very same way that I envisioned myself out here. Like, I envisioned myself, learning like technology. You know what I'm saying? I was, I consider myself like a nerd. You know what I'm saying? So I wanted to hurry up and get out here and get a computer in my hands, because I felt that with a computer or a phone in my hand, I had the world was actually like literally, at my hands. And so that was a goal of mine, learning that. getting affiliated with certain organizations, like the organization that I worked for, the State Appellate Defender's Office. That was one of my goals, to be affiliated with them. I didn't know that I would end up, getting hired by them, but it was a goal of mine. I went there, ended up getting hired. The Campaign for the Fair Sentencing of Youth. I read about them prior to me getting out. There was a small paragraph that said the work they were doing with ICANN, the Incarcerated Children's Advocacy Network. It was a group of formerly incarcerated juveniles across the country that were advocating for some changes. And so a goal of mine was to come out here and reach out to them. And I'm talking within days of me coming home, as soon as I learned how to use Messenger and Facebook, I looked up who is now the executive director of this organization. I looked him up, built a relationship with him, and now I'm working side by side with him. So those are some of the goals, goals of getting back with my family. Even though my grandmother, thank God, she's still here and was there when I came home. 27 years have, created a big strain upon my family, my relationships, my sister, my brother, my aunts and uncles. I had cousins who I hadn't seen in 27 years. So that was a goal of mine, to actually reconnect with them. I didn't come home with an attitude or bitter about somebody not, writing me or not coming to see me. I want to leave all that prison stuff behind. I wanted to start these relationships new with my family. I want to build upon them. And most importantly, I wanted them to know that I was a different person, that I was a grown man now, and that I had let go a lot of, my childhood ways. And those were things that I was able to accomplish, eventually getting my car, traveling, I set goals to travel. I've been traveling all over this country, so far. I was able to go back to Puerto Rico. So those are some of the goals that I had set for myself, and I've been able to accomplish those things. And I'm still, pushing towards, furthering, and accomplishing some more goals.
I think that your redemption story is super inspiring, and I think it's also really smart to set goals just in general, but especially during difficult times. I apologize for jumping back and forth between your story and your work with juvenile delinquents, but from what I understand, behavior is a huge factor of stigma that currently surrounds these delinquents. What trends or patterns of behaviors have you seen in the juvenile offenders or lifers that you have worked with, and what are your methods of efficiently helping them change those behaviors?
Well, yeah, I think there's been a huge misconception, right? So, and I think this is how we got to this problem in the first place. Back in the 80s and the 90s, there was this big push against, they coined this term super predators. You know what I'm saying? And so I think what ended up happening was that there's a lot of politicians, there's a lot of people that were involved in the media. They're putting out this narrative of these dangerous kids, and that we're no good, and they can't ever be changed, and so we need to pass these laws to put them in prison and keep them there. You know what I'm saying? And that was such a big misconception. You know what I'm saying? Because as we know, and as we've learned in the last 10 or 20 years, you know what I'm saying, the brain doesn't develop until like in your mid-20s. The average, most children grow out of crime. There's and I think being told at an early age that you're never going to amount to nothing, and that you're either worse or the worst. That was something, man. I think it's that common thing that most juveniles, man. Matter of fact, all juveniles have with us, where it just did something to our soul. You know what I'm saying? It just did something to our soul to be that young and be told that you're not going to amount to nothing. You know what I'm saying? That became like the fuel, man. That became the thing, man, that really, really drove or has driven so many, juveniles across this country to get out and show otherwise. You know what I'm saying? The vast majority, we got over 1,000 juvenile lifers have been released in this country, and the vast majority of them are doing great. They're entrepreneurs, they're working for nonprofits, they're advocating. And then you have some of them who are just simply living just good, normal, peaceful lives. You know what I'm saying? They're not reoffending, they're taking care of their families. So I think that is the thing that really, really got myself, you know what I'm saying, to come out here, man, and want to get involved in this juvenile justice system. And, it just we need more programming. We need more programming. We need more I remember when I was a kid, there was numerous community organizations and places for kids to go. So I think And I also think that, children also should be taught about the system, right? Because if you're gonna expose children, to go into a system that can potentially, keep them there for the rest of their lives, and I think that also should be a part of in school. Kids should learn about the system that they're involved in, man, because it's, even though we're young at the time, and we probably, it'll probably, be hard for us to understand it. I think it's something that we need to learn. We need to learn about the juvenile justice system and how harsh it could be for certain crimes.
Jose, your story is one of resilience and transformation. Not to cut you off, but really quickly, what advice or message would you like to share with others who have been affected by the criminal justice system and are seeking a path to redemption and reform?
I would say, man, just like, don't give up. Don't give up, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, we all have a purpose in life. We all have a purpose in life. And, there's a lot of opportunity out here, man, but you have to get up and go get it. You know what I'm saying? You can't sit back. Nobody owes you nothing. You can't come out here mad at the world, you know what I'm saying, for whatever it is that you went through. You have to believe in yourself, man. You have to believe in yourself. You have to believe that you're more than that one mistake that you made. And really, really, man, just be your authentic self. You know what I'm saying? I wasn't being my authentic self when I was young. I was involved in gangs, and I had, basically put on that persona of gangs. But once, like, when I was in prison and I went to school and I started learning and I started realizing, that I was able to, like, I would look at like, man, I'm actually smart, right? And that was something that nobody ever told me that, you know what I'm saying? And so that was something that I embraced, man. And I really, really just really felt comfortable in my own skin. You know what I'm saying? So just be your authentic self. Know that, owe yourself. You know what I'm saying? You have to, like, I owe it to myself. Of course, I owe society for something that I did. Of course, I owe the victims in my case, you know what I'm saying, to do better. But most importantly, I owe it to myself to come out here and just be the best that I can be, man. And, I don't have to be defined by what it is I went through. You know what I'm saying? Like, life after prison is still possible. Success after prison is still possible. I'm a prime example of that. That's one of the things that really, really pushes me, because I want to be an example for those that come behind me. Like, hey, if you want it bad enough, you can get it. You know what I'm saying? And it doesn't have to be an advocate. You know what I'm saying? If your path as a truck driver, just be the best damn truck driver you can be. You know what I'm saying? If you're gonna be somebody cleaning toilets, be that. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's okay. You know what I'm saying? Just be the person that you are. Embrace the process. Don't cheat the process. You know what I'm saying? And you can make it. It's possible. I've seen it done with myself and many others who have come before me, and I'm sure after me as well.
Well, thank you so much, Jose, for joining us. To the listeners, thank you so much for joining us for another episode of A Second Chance, Stories of Young Offenders. Until next time, remember that your story is still being written and that there's always hope for a brighter future. See you soon.